All right, guys. My everyone, and thank you for attending Fae Abilities. I have designed this class to be about an hour in length, and in order to answer questions, because I know you guys will have them, I do ask that you hold your questions for times when I'm stopping throughout the class. However, if you have something to add to the class, please feel free to chime in. Before I start, before I do anything else, for anyone who showed up after I put it out, there's a cookie right near me. It has some handouts in it and some cookies as well, or a cookie. Um, but please make sure you touch my cookie so that you can get all the handouts for it. I also want to define what I mean by Fae. In myth, the the term Fae covers many different races, from fairies to fauns to nymphs to elves. However, in our realms, the Sims that we role play on, the Fae are the race term used for flying diminutives such as fairies, sprites, pixies, etc., such as myself and Sable. In fairy mythos, the Fae have the ability to use many different types of magic. These are innate abilities that come with this race. In the GA, we are not able to use all of the abilities that you might find in mythos, but we do have quite a few that we can use, and I will be discussing them in this class. So, can anyone tell me some of the abilities that you might see the Fae of the GA use? Not necessarily. You might, Elos, but I might not. Glamour. Glamour is the ability that you are going to see the Fae and the GA use the most, the absolute most of. So the abilities I'm going to discuss today are Fairy Glamour, Speaking with Animals, or the Sylvan Tongue, is what we call it, the Fae Cantrips, Fairy Lights, Fae Fire, Fae Touch. I'm going to give a brief overview of them and how you might see them, or if you are Fae, use them in roleplay. As I said, it is kind of a term, Fae Touch. It's a little bit more than that, Nif. You also probably will not see the Fae using it, as there are issues with it. Um, issues kind of, I'll go into it later. What was I saying? Oh, the main type of glamour is our personal glamour. It is how the Fae make themselves look to others. We have our base looks, such as how I appear right now. With I think I have brown skin right now. I have changed my colors since the last time I wrote this class, where I was pink. Um, so I had pink skin at one point. I've had purple skin. I've had yellow skin. I usually have horns, but I can change my looks on a whim if I should wish to. Yes, I've done green quite a bit. Brown's been my base color. I stayed away from green for a very long time because Fayetteville was green. When I do use green, yes, Rio's is too. When I do use green, I'm usually just kind of thinking about Fayetteville a lot, um, because she is somebody who mentored me and I looked up to for the longest time. Um, we can also glamour ourselves to look like other humanoids, such as elf, drow, or human, just to name a few. And I have a slideshow right back here that kind of gives you an idea of the different looks a Fae could do. These are more of a fantasy type look if you're watching them. I'm gonna pause it right there. Um, we are also able to glamour ourselves to blend into our surroundings, making us seemingly invisible. Note the word that I am using, seemingly, because we are not invisible. I like to compare it to those artists who use body paint to blend themselves into a brick wall. That is pretty much how it works. And if you look at the picture behind me, yes, yep, that is a person painted to blend into their surroundings. So it's not that we are invisible. It's just it's just like a type of camouflage. Exactly, Nif. Also, here there's another one right there, with the woman in the leaves. That is actually a person painted to blend into the leaves, so that you have a really good idea of what that type of glamour looks like, right? Let me see. All right. Okay. So, along with being able to do that, the Fae can also glamour themselves to look like animals. We do not shift into these animals, we just appear as such to those around us. This means that we do not gain any better sense of smell or hearing. Thanks, Isabel. That's okay. Um, we do not actually gain any animal like abilities when we are glamored as an animal. So, say I glamour myself as a fox, I do not gain a better sense of hearing or smell or sight depending upon the animal I am glamoring as. I am still a fae. And I want to kind of use an excerpt from a book that I read by Sian Crawford, where the heroine was a fae and she was able to use glamour. And one of the paragraphs summed it up perfectly for me. I was reading it, I was like, oh, that is exactly it. So here it goes. I wasn't a shifter. When glamored, I still moved like myself, still had the same speed, same gait, same body. But to anyone who happened to observe me, I looked like a little red fox. A glamour was like an illusional bubble around me. So I hope that helps you guys kind of have a better idea about Fae making themselves look like an animal, right? Glamour is an illusionary magic. The only people who can see through it are either other Fae who have the ability to glamour themselves or mages who have gained the ability with their leveling in their guild. So not everybody can see us. I do know that there are two, I think I called them Fae stones, but in Mythos they're called hag stones. So they are actually rocks with a naturally bored hole through them. Yes. Yep. So it's like a hole in the middle of a stone, put there by natural means, which would give the holder the ability, if they look through it, to potentially see through fake glamour. There's two of them out there. I know Denon has one because he found it when I did a little hunt quest sort of on Anar when we had our earthquake, and then I think Nadra has one. Um, where was I? There is another type of glamour. Let's see if I have that up. I do. The other type of glamour that we use, we tend to not use this glamour so much, is to be able to glamour another object or being into looking like something other than they are. So I'm going to use the example of fairy gold right now, and you see a picture behind me of a gold coin. So to put that in a nutshell, it's basically a small object such as an acorn. When we're talking about fairy gold, such as an acorn that is glamored to look like a piece of gold or a gold coin. Once the Fae has walked away from it, or as Sable and I were discussing earlier, once it is no longer in the sight of the Fae, so we could simply just turn our back, that object loses its glamour, and what is then seen is the object that is under that glamour. So, say we are doing fairy gold, like this gold coin behind me, it could actually be an acorn that we're using as a form of payment for somebody. In the GA, our use of this type of glamour is even more limited when it comes to glamoring either an object or another being. Once we can no longer see them, turn our back, it falls. Keep in mind, when the Fae use our glamour, it does deplete our own personal magic. The stronger the glamour that we use, the more of our energy it takes to use it. So if we are glamoring another player, the glamour we are using on ourselves diminishes. This means we cannot glamour ourselves to look like anything other than ourselves, typically, if we are using it on someone or something. So basically, the more magic that we are using, the less ability we have to use ourselves. So if we were using glamour to, say I was using glamour on Nif to make him look like a drow, potentially, the glamour that I use on myself, I do not have as strong of an ability. So I would not be able to glamour myself to look like a fox if I'm glamoring another person to look like a drow. We can only do one glamour at a time. If a Fae has used a strong, let me see, I kind of got ahead of myself. If we're using a strong glamour on either ourselves or another player, we won't typically be able to turn around and do it again immediately. We do need to replenish our magic before doing so, because all magic comes at a price, regardless if it's the Fae magical abilities or even our abilities in our guild or class. Does anyone have any questions on glamour? Well, I'm going to put it this way. Junie is pretty much always glamored. My personal glamour is consistent. Um, so it doesn't run out. However, if I expend it, like I said, if I was using it on another person or object, once they were no longer in my sight, their glamour is going to fall. So, say, as I was saying before, yes, if I had glamored Nif to look like a drow and he walks off into a crowd and I can no longer see him, he's going to lose that glamour. Or if I use fairy gold, I use that acorn that looks like a coin, I hand it to somebody, say they close their hand, I can no longer see it, it loses its glamour and it turns back into, or doesn't turn back into an acorn, but that glamour falls off, so the acorn is revealed. The glamour ability to look like an animal, and let me, I need to delve into this a little bit because I need to make sure that the rules are followed. Looking like an animal because it's your own personal glamour, that's going to last as long as you want it to. To delve into those rules a little bit a little bit more though, you cannot glamour yourself to be anything bigger than what you actually are. So you could do like a squirrel, a fox, a bird, and we can use birds because we do, those winged fae do have the ability to fly. A wolf potentially, not a dire wolf because those would probably be bigger than what we typically are. Um, we need to keep in mind how big are we, and what type of animals would fit into that realm. We cannot glamour ourselves to look like another magical animal. Yes, a fae who has the ability to glamour themselves will typically be able to see through that fae glamour. I don't know about satyrs so much. That I'd have to ask a little bit more about because satyrs don't have the ability to glamour. Um, Going back onto the rules though, A Fae cannot glamour themselves as a dragon. They cannot glamour themselves as a griffin. They cannot glamour themselves as. Yeah, he probably would. A dragon, a griffin, a unicorn. So another mythical beast or any mythical type beast, a Fae would not be able to glamour themselves as. It has to be an animal that is found in nature. Any other questions? Yes, Coda. They have to be. They cannot be a mythical type, mythical magical type creature. And personally, I just want to put that out there. Personally, I wouldn't have an issue with a satyr being able to see through my glamour. It's just they would have to reach out to me if we're in RP, because if they did that in RP, it could damage a storyline that I'm trying to do. Does that make sense, Elos? Yes, yes. Especially, there's so many different. There's glamour, and then there's people who are in disguise, and like the rogues, for instance. You want to make sure, or somebody who has an illusion on them. I know that Sia has put illusions on Junie so that her glamour is not able to be seen through, especially by mages, to make sure that the RP could be properly played, whatever it was we were doing. The nuns RP. Yes, she is. So Sia's illusions um, would not be easily seen through at all. At all. I don't think there's really anyone who could see through them, if I remember correctly. Are there any other questions before I move on? Awesome. I like it when I explain things perfectly. Helps with my ego. Right, let's see if the next. Let's see if I did this right. I did! Okay, so the next Fae ability I am going to talk about is their ability to talk to animals. This is the Sylvan Tongue. A druid has, as they level, learns the Sylvan Tongue. This is the language that all animals know. A level 1 or 2 druid who is not Fae is still learning and have the ability to speak this language. We have a limited ability to speak this language and therefore would not be able to speak with all animals until they hit level 3. However, a Fae is born knowing the Sylvan tongue and does not have to learn it the same way a druid does. So we automatically, out of the gate, can speak to animals. Um, uh, not, I'm not sure what you mean, Nif, by nymph. um, a nymph is not necessarily. Are you talking about a female satyr? The female satyrs are fawns. They're not technically nymphs. Like, I mean, I can see where you're coming from. Right. A nymph is not necessarily a female satyr. Yes, it depends upon your lore, but GA speak, a fawn isn't technically a nymph. I mean, if you want to go that route, then satyrs are a type of nymph as well. Do you know what I'm saying? Getting back to the Sylvan tongue, Some Fae show more affinity to some creatures over others and will be communicating with them more often. This is not to say that a Fae could not potentially communicate with any animal that they wish to. However, if you are a land-based Fae, the ability to talk to fish is going to be probably pretty minimal. So Junie is an earth-based Fae. Um, she would have a hard time speaking with a fish. A water sprite or water nymph will have an easier time talking to water dwelling creatures. I'm stuttering, I think. Water dwelling creatures as opposed to the more earth based creatures, if that makes sense, hopefully. So, the way I look at it, I know I delved into this in my Fae 101 class. Selkies. I think it's with an E, Selkies. Um, so to me, in my head, to help you guys understand exactly the Sylvan tongue, and how I kind of translate it, and I don't know if everybody is in agreement, but I think Mela said that she agrees, and I think Sable agrees a little bit, and even Sia. The Sylvan tongue, it is not its own separate language. It's basically, as I was saying in my Fae 101 class, I know a little bit of Spanish. I can speak a little bit and I can understand a little bit, but when somebody is speaking to me in Spanish, my brain is translating it into English for me. The same would be said with somebody who speaks Greek, but they can understand English. I'll be speaking English, but their brain's going to translate it into their own um, their own language. Um, so, say you have one person who speaks English, one person who speaks Greek, they can communicate. Their brains are going to be translating it into the language that they understand, and they're going to speak their regular language. I hope that makes sense. So basically, if I was going to speak to have a conversation with a squirrel, like this guy here behind me, who looks full of surprise, like, oh my God, you can talk to me? Um, I'll hear his little chitters and I'll be able to understand it in, say, the common tongue. And I'm going to speak back to him in the common tongue. And he's going to understand me because of the fact that I have this ability to use and understand the Sylvan tongue. Make sense? I really like his face, like that surprised look on his face. Okay, so moving along. The next thing I am going to speak on are the Fae cantrips. These are because Fae are elementally based: earth, air, water, fire. Each Fae is born to have one of these, have an affinity to one of these elements, just one of the elements. So an earth-based Fae would not be able to use any of the other three. So an earth-based Fae could not use air, water, or fire unless they seek out either the druid route or they become a mage elementalist. Then they might be able to work with those other elements. Um, they are you. Hold on, I lost my spot. Um, a Fae, if they were to change their base element, which they really shouldn't do, that's kind of frowned upon. But if for whatever reason, through RP, they discover that, oh, I'm not really an earth-based Fae, I am a water-based Fae, they would lose their ability, their cantrips for that earth-based element. If that makes sense. It does get really muddy. So if you are an earth-based Fae, you are an earth-based Fae. You really shouldn't be going about switching your element because things kind of get confusing and weird. And you kind of want to stick with what you initially went with, because if you're changing things willy-nilly, people will kind of it it is it kind of is like switching religion. It's more, actually, I'm going to put it more along the lines of switching um, ethnic background, if that makes sense, or gender. Because I don't want this to come out sounding wrong. Like, it's doable, you can do it, right? Yeah. um and I understand the reasoning behind that, so I don't want to get into this because I don't want something to come out sounding, yeah, right, because I'm okay with that. Like, you are who you are, you are who you are. And that's the way I look at it. um but it's kind of more difficult. So switching, that's why I used it more for ethnical backgrounds, because that is very, very hard to change. um yes. um so your base element is more kind of along the lines of that. um so going over the cantrips. Let's see if this switches. Oh, it switched too fast for me. Son of a gun. Hold on. So an Earth Fae, it switched too fast for me. An Earth Fae is able to cause plants to grow or sprout. Um, they might be able to know various plants and what they can be used for, either medicinally or more nefarious reasons, such as poisons. Um, But when I say a plant to sprout, you can get it to grow into a sapling, but you wouldn't be able to necessarily get it to grow into a mature plant. So let's use an oak for an example. You'd be able to get it to sprout from the ground, get it to grow into a sapling, but in order for it to get to grow to its mature status, that big, huge, beautiful tree, that would not be doable. An air fae, and that's what this picture is able to manipulate the wind or the air around them. They can either cause a fierce wind to blow. Son of a gun, it went by too quickly. Um, or it could cause the air to still. A fire fae is able to spark a flame or cause those flames to sputter out and die, but they cannot cause a raging inferno or throw a fireball. So basically, it's your very basic, most um, smallest type of like starter abilities, is what I'm going to say. A water fae is able to manipulate water. They might be able to cause it to rain given enough moisture in the clouds, or to send the water of a small puddle back into the earth. So, given these abilities, imagine what four Fae, each with a different base element, and even though they can only do a little bit, imagine what they could do if they work together with each of their elements. In the cookie giver that hopefully you all touched by now, there is a list of Fae cantrips, but please keep in mind that these are from D&D and they might not all be allowed to be used in the GA. If you have questions and you're a Fae looking to use them, reach out to your Fae lead of whatever sim you're playing on. And keep in mind that you can only choose one of the cantrips. So one ability from one of the elements, if I'm remembering correctly. I play a druid. I play an earth-based element Fae and an earth-based druid. So my affinity to be able to use that element is more exponential than, say, if I was an air element based Fae with an air or an earth element based druid. If that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions in regards to the cantrips? What are your questions or question, Coda? No, you can only use one. Only one cantrip. If you're a druid playing a different element as your base element for druid, I mean, typically, if you're an earth-based fae, you're gonna want to be an earth-based elemental druid, because you are going to be very, very strong. Yes. So as you grow in your power as a druid, as a water fae and a water druid, your power for water is going to be exponential. Um, just as when I don't use it a lot. I've done it maybe twice in RP. I don't even really use the elements that much in RP because I feel like I'd rather have my personality show rather than my abilities show. Um, I did encase Lark in stone at one point, um, because of the fact that I am this earth based element. My affinity is actually with the earth and the rocks and the stones rather than the plants. So you will see me interacting with those more because of the fact that, because of my backstory, because of the fact that Junie is literally born of the earth rather than of a plant. Um, so I will RP with crystals and gems more than I will with anything else. What do you mean by that, Nif? You were gonna get up when I said what? Oh, you heard that? I thought I whispered that quiet enough. My stomach is growling. It is. It is. And Fae are actually pretty emotional creatures. I mean, we are chaotic. I can't talk anymore. Yes, we are chaotic based creatures for the most part. Um, yes. Yep. Junie's Junie's reactions are usually kind of, I usually base them off of a whim, my mood. How do I want this to go? Junie is actually, even though she is the lead for the light fae, she is not technically a light fae, believe it or not, guys. She is chaotic neutral and she has gone both ways in RP. Any other questions before I move along? All right. So, the next two topics I am going to speak a little bit about are fairy lights and fairy fire. Let's see if I can get this to stop before skipping to the next picture. Yes! I had to do that really quickly. That's what the problem is. Okay, so this is fairy lights.
Mic off.
They are dancing lights and are similar to will-o-wisps and can be used to help either distract another being or to offer a little bit of light when needed, or along a pathway, such as the picture here. Um, let's see if I. Oh, there we go. Okay, you're hearing my angry growls. Fairy fire. And this is the best example that I could find, even though it's itty bitty. Fairy fire will cause something to glow as if it is a flame. This flame is typically green, blue, or purple. It does not burn or cause damage to the being or object that it is used on like a normal flame would. It is helpful when you need a dim light source and when used on an object, or even a being. It can also help you keep track of your party members when traveling in the dark or the deep roads when there isn't those UV light sources that Malekith has talked about. And you can use them to help light up a dark path you are traveling, kind of like moving torches. So imagine what you can do. You can cause your party members to be aflame as moving torches as you walk through a dark area. Those are pretty simple in explanation. Are there questions in regards to either the fairy lights or the fairy fire? I mean, you never know. Maybe we want you to be the target so that we aren't the ones being attacked. All right, so the last ability I'm going to talk on, and this you will not see used all that much, if ever, by the Fae, because there are some issues with it, and it is Fae Touch. This is the ability that the Fae have to put another being under their thrall. So basically, it is mind control. In order to do this, a Fae must touch another being with the intent of putting that player under their thrall. This means there is absolutely no way a Fae can accidentally use Fae Touch. It is also very rare for another Fae to fall under another Fae's thrall, though that is not to say that it cannot happen. Even if a Fae was able to sneak in a touch with the intent to put another being under their thrall, not all beings would be susceptible, nor does it work every time. I'm going to use Nif as an example because Nif actually has mind control resistance with the Illithid. Therefore, Nif most likely would not fall under being able to be put under the Fae thrall, under Fae touch. Drow, I'm going to use Baal as another example because Drow have mind control resistance. They would probably not fall underneath that effect. What are the two types, Sniff? Okay. Can you give an example of the differences between those two? Mm, right. But I would think that the domination would be the stronger of the two anyway. Right. So if you have a resistance to the illithid, I would assume that you would have the resistance to the Fae. Do you see what I'm saying? That's actually a great way to put it, Coda. Basically, Elos was talking to Sable and I earlier about the satyr's ability to charm, which would be probably similar to the Fae touch, but on a lesser note. All right. Yeah, because I wouldn't think that the Fae touch would make somebody mindless to doing everything that the Fae want, but they really want to do what they say. Do you see what I'm saying? Because when I think thrall, I mean, I kind of think like minions, like mindless minions doing whatever they're told. Right, right. And when I say thrall, I don't mean thralls like people with mindless zombies or minions, because thrall in a Fey way is more like a compulsion, like Nith was saying. I do want to say that not all Fey types, not all Fey that Fey fall under the kind of umbrella of Fey. Um, not all Fey types have the ability for Fey touch, and it is typically only allowed to be used, at least in Silvara, by the Elder Fae. It may not even be allowed to be used in any of the other RP sims. The Elder Fae are the Fae that have been actively role playing in the GA for at least 6 months, probably longer. It's 6 months to a year typically, and the Fae almost never will use this ability in RP. There are both IC and OOC reasons as to why we don't use it. The biggest reason being that there is such a huge potential for god modding and roleplay that we will not use it. Um, if you are a Fae looking to potentially use this ability, please, please, please reach out to your Fae lead before you do so. Um, there are, at least in Silvara, there are quite a few requirements that we have that need to be fulfilled, even if you're a tenured Fae RPer. So that pretty much covers the Fae abilities. Class. Does anyone have any questions regarding either what I just went over or anything that I did not cover in this class in regards to Fae abilities? You're welcome, Coda. I do need to eat a cookie. I need something. I hear some sort of scratching noise. So I assume somebody's typing. Oh my god, Yada. That's awesome. I'm really glad it helped you, Elos. I am always, even when I'm not logged in, I am always available to answer any questions. I am in Discord. You guys can reach out to me easily in PMs to ask me questions. Sable is my second. She is my backup in the Fae groups of Silvara, so you can always um, ask her. Medway, Nif is recording, so the class will be up on YouTube. So you can always catch it again if you need. Yes, I am on Discord. I'm also in Skype. Um, or you can reach out, like I said, you can reach out to Sable. Um, she has other ways to reach me as well in real life. She can always text me too. Right, I think that's it if there are no questions. Thank you everybody for showing up. I can get you the link if you give me 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Hold on 1 second. Um, oh, Nif beat me to it. I know, Elos, the difference between like a satyr and a, I don't want to say typical fae because there's no such thing as a typical fae, but the winged varieties, I know that there are differences, and some of the lines are a little bit more gray between the two. So if you have questions or anyone in the hive has questions, and you don't know the answer, you can send them to me anytime. Thank you guys all for showing up. It's a great class. I appreciate it. Love your faces.